What kind of value do you think this has?
So I would imagine you're talking 75, 100,000.
Sword pistol. This is one of the rarest weapons in the world. It's a 16th century sword pistol. They were used to inflict mortal wounds with the sword and deliver the final blow with the weapon. The owner says it's been in his family for a long time and wants $20,000 for the weapon.
How much you asking for it?
20 grand.
Rick, amazed by the customer's confidence and the asking price, decides to call his weapons expert. The expert explains what this weapon was made for.
It was made to kill wild boar once they were injured.
The expert also concludes that at the time, this was the best weapon of its kind. With that said, Rick asks the most important question.
So what does a super fancy Hirschfanger go for?
But before answering, the expert wants to see if the weapon can fire, because that could significantly increase its value.
One, if it still wasn't dead or it started to run away.
Whoa!
The weapon worked perfectly, and the expert proceeds to tell Rick how much this pistol could be worth.
What do you think this thing is worth?
The realistic value in today's market is about $12,000.
After the expert left, Rick went ahead and offered $7,000.
I'll give you 7.
I'll go 1050.
The seller was only willing to go down to $10,500, which Rick found to be too expensive, so in the end, the seller left with the intention of selling the pistol at an auction. Duck foot pistols. This man wants to sell a pair of duck foot pistols. These are pistols made for an 18th century British naval officer. They have a peculiar name because they resemble a duck's foot. The seller wants to sell these pistols for $50,000. Chumlee is stunned by the price, but decides to try them out before making a decision. Everyone liked the pistols, so they proceeded with negotiations.
So what are you looking to get out of him?
I was looking for 50,000.
You know I can't pay that.
Corey rejected the offer of $50,000 immediately and said that $30,000 was the best offer he could make. The expert kept pushing for a higher price and said that the lowest amount he was willing to sell it for was $35,000.
30 grand's what I can do.
Sorry, I can't take anything less than 35.
Well, I appreciate it, my man. Maybe
Thank
next
you.
time.
World of Warcraft sword. This young man brought a giant toy sword, and you won't believe how much he was offered for it. In this episode, he brings a life-size sword from the video game World of Warcraft. The owner of the sword says it's in perfect condition because he never took it out of its box and now he wants to sell it. Rick and Chumlee wait no longer and take the sword out of its box. They are both fascinated by the quality and details. The owner comments that the sword is well known among gamers and could be very valuable. Let's see how much he asked for it.
How much you want for this thing?
I'm thinking $5,000.
Rick has no idea of the sword's value and wants to know if it's really authentic, so he decides to call an expert to examine it. The expert confirms that items from this game are actually very popular and also collectible. Rick asks him the most important question.
So is this thing authentic or is it just a knockoff?
The expert reviews all the details, the logo on the sword, the special engravings, and concludes the following.
This is definitely an authentic one.
Now let's see how much the expert valued it at.
What's this thing go for it?
I think you probably are going to be able to get somewhere around $1,350 for this.
The seller was not happy with this evaluation since he thought it was too low and asked Rick for $1,000.
Could I get $1,000 for it?
I have to resell it. It's going to sit there for a while.
Rick wasn't willing to pay that, and his best offer was $750. The seller thought about it for a while and agreed to this offer. Antique crossbow. This man came to the pawn shop wanting to sell his antique crossbow. It's an antique crossbow from the 18th century that has a family crest engraved on it, along with a tag and a strange reloading mechanism. Corey explains that crossbows were so powerful and easy to use that in 1096, Pope Urban II had to ban them for civilian use.
All in all, really scary weapon for someone to have.
Yeah.
The seller, already knowing that this was a very rare weapon, is asking for $20,000.
How much are you looking to get out of it?
I was thinking around 20,000.
Corey doesn't know the value of this historical piece, so before making an offer, he decides to call an expert. The expert arrives and explains that in the 18th century, crossbows were no longer used for combat, but were used for recreational sports, which would indicate that this crossbow belonged to a German noble family. Finally, the expert concludes that everything seems original, but unfortunately they can't prove it because it could break due to its age, and the fact that it wouldn't be usable would lower its value. Corey then asks the expert how much he thinks it's worth.
What's it worth?
Based on how old it is and the condition it's in, I think it's worth $10,000.
The seller is disappointed by the price given by the expert since he wanted $20,000 for the crossbow. After the expert left, Corey made this offer to the seller.
I'd offer you about $5,000.
For that, I'll hang on to it for now. Maybe sell it later on in life.
Butte shotgun. This man wants to sell a Butte shotgun. It is one of the most valuable shotguns in the world. The owner says he inherited the shotgun from his father and wants to sell it because his wife doesn't like seeing it hanging on the wall. Rick comments that this shotgun was made by the best gunsmith in history, Butte, who was also Napoleon's gunsmith, and in most cases these shotguns were made for royalty. Rick then asks him how much he wants for the shotgun.
Well, how much do you want for it? Because if he wants $50, I'll just give him that now and we'll...
I'm looking at 10 grand.
Rick comments that he is not sure of its possible great value, so he decides to call his weapons expert Alex Cranmer to verify its authenticity and value. The expert arrives and examines the shotgun in detail and is surprised at its good condition. However, the expert needs to shoot it to determine its true value. Everyone is surprised at how well it shoots, and that makes its value increase from $10,000 to $30,000.
What do you think it's worth?
I wouldn't be surprised to see it sell up for $30,000.
The seller is very happy with this price and asks for $20,000 for the shotgun.
So you were asking 10, I'm assuming you want a little bit more now?
20.
Rick declines this asking price and counteroffers $16,000.
I'll tell you what, I'll give you 16 grand for it.
It's a lot more than I thought I would get. We'll do 16.
Pistol crutches. A man enters the store with something quite unique. The initial encounter reveals the unusual combination of crutches with a concealed pistol, and this piques Rick's curiosity. The arrival of the firearms expert adds depth to the story, hinting at the historical significance of these crutches turned guns. But before the expert can make a decision on their price, he needs to test them. The test firing is successful, surprising everyone as it's not just a relic, it's a functioning piece of history. But the final appraisal and negotiation phase presents the monetary value of the crutch pistols, shifting the focus from historical significance to the potential profit of $25,000 for the seller.
I want 25 racks.
I'll be fair with you, I'll give you 13 grand.
Can we go to 15 at least?
You know what? I'll risk it at 15.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you.
The seller's decision to accept $15,000 signifies a successful transaction. Colt Dragoon. This man wants to sell a Colt Dragoon pistol, one of the most powerful and famous revolvers in the world. The owner says he bought it at an auction and wants $13,000 for it. Corey explains that this pistol was the one Colt used to succeed, and that the previous ones had been failures. He realizes the seller's asking price isn't that high, but he's afraid it might be fake.
We have one problem with these guns. It is probably one of the most faked guns that they possibly make in the world.
He calls his gun expert, Craig, to verify its authenticity. The expert arrives and examines the Colt, concluding the following.
I like what I see. It's real.
However, the expert then gives the gun owner the bad news.
What do you think it's worth?
Gun's worth about $8,500.
The gun is only worth $8,000. The owner disagrees and thinks the value is too low. With that in mind, Corey begins the negotiation.
Can you go any lower than $13,000?
Maybe a few $100s.
So you can't do $8,500.
I can't do it. Even if you were a beautiful woman, I couldn't do it.
Corey tries to lower the price, but the seller is firm on selling the pistol for $12,400. In the end, they couldn't reach an agreement and they part ways. Samurai sword. This man didn't know that his sword was hiding something inside. This is a very rare 19th century Japanese sword with a wooden blade and some gold details on the hilt. The owner says his grandfather brought it back from World War II, but he has no further information about its origin. Corey comments that he's never dealt with a sword like this, but suspects it has something special about it and could be more valuable than it appears. So he decides to call an expert to examine it. The expert explains that these types of swords are more common than they seem, since after World War II, all swords in Japan were confiscated, leaving only the handles because they weren't considered dangerous. However, the expert notices something strange. The expert begins to disassemble the sword.
Maybe you get lucky. It's a hidden coin pocket.
The expert found a hidden coin pocket inside the sword and explained that people used to hide their coins in swords because they were afraid of being robbed. Corey then asks the expert how much something like this can be worth, and here's what the expert had to say.
In excellent condition like this, especially with the addition of the hidden coin pocket, well, this thing would be worth an easy $8,000.
The expert leaves, and the negotiations begin with Corey offering $4,000.
I'd like to give you 4.
6.5.
Corey is not willing to pay that amount, so he gave the seller a final offer.
I'll tell you what, I'll do 5.
5 seems fair.
All right, deal.
Antique Russian saber. This man wants to sell the rarest sword in the world.
This is actually, it's like a historically significant sword.
It's an antique Russian saber from the 20th century. The owner says that he inherited this sword after his grandfather passed away and doesn't know much about the sword's history or its value. Chumlee comments that it is unusual because of its design and details. He then proceeds to inspect the sword and notices Arabic writing, which puzzles him. So before purchasing this item, Chumlee calls in an expert to determine its value. The expert arrives and is shocked since this sword belonged to a Russian prince called Ivan Ivanovich Odoevsky. What is even more shocking is that this prince was killed with this sword on him in the Battle of Brienne. The expert then explains that the Arabic mark on the blade means that the blade was made in Persia.
This Arabic writing means it came out of Persia.
Chumlee then asks him the most important question.
What kind of value do you think this has?
So I would imagine you're talking 75, 100,000.
Chumlee is shocked by the price that the expert gave and proceeds to offer the seller $20,000.
I'd buy it for 20,000.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
The seller didn't expect such a low offer and declined immediately. The seller then said that the minimum amount he would accept is $40,000. Chumlee thought about it for a bit, but in the end rejected the offer and no deal was made.
Hey guys, if you enjoy the content, don't forget to subscribe the channel, hit the bell icon to get notified about new videos, and show your love by liking and commenting down below.